What if society's judgment of you as a parent aren't yours? What if the unspoken pressures to be the rock, the subtle shame of being called just a dad, and the cultural script that frames mothers as martyrs and fathers as helpers aren't accidental, but systemic? A code written across generations, reinforced by biased policies, media tropes, and ancestral roles that haunt modern custody battles. Here's the silent war distorting families. Your value as a parent is a battleground. On one side, a world that claims equality but funds maternity leave 4-1 over paternity, markets parenting tools to mothers 83% of the time, and shames fathers for requesting flex time. On the other hand, your primal right to nurture. This isn't about diapers, formulas, or birthday parties. This is about dismantling the architecture of inequity. Tonight, we expose the 5 societal algorithms that disempower fathers, impoverish families, and how to rewrite them. This isn't parenting talk, it's an excavation. Your role has been held hostage by daycare forms that default to mothers' names, by court systems that award custody to moms 65% more often, and workplaces that penalize paternal caregiving. But tonight, we reclaim the narrative. So subscribe now. Share this with every parent tired of outdated script. This isn't a podcast, it's a rebellion. So stay tuned to redefine parenthood. Welcome to Father's Day. Now, I like starting our conversations off like we do, because at the end of the day, we always tend to unpack a theme that kind of sets the conditions for the conversation that we're going to have. But first and foremost, I want to make sure that I give a disclaimer because there's a level of responsibility that comes with awareness. Once you become aware of a thing, you are responsible for researching it for clarity. But here's the rub: your research for the discovery of the information you were made aware of, not to confirm your biases. That is a rejection within itself. Rejecting this responsibility is called choice ignorance. In other words, once you are aware, you are accountable. The truth doesn't care about how we feel or where we got our current information. Ultimately, this means telling the truth runs the risk of offending or hurting someone else's feelings. This may be one of those conversations where awareness and offense happens at the same time. So if you want to, well, I'll say it like this. So if you want to be accountable for the information you will hear in this evening's conversation, you're in the right place. But if you don't want to be accountable, then you might want to leave now. For those of you who remain, I assume you are, like many of us, exhausted of the state of our community and are willing to be a part of the change. If so, good, because that's what these forefathers, get it? Forefathers. Yeah, bad dad joke. That's okay. That's what these forefathers are, are going to do today. So gentlemen, I want to kind of start off because, again, on the Empowering Perspective community, we believe that we're the subject matter experts of our own opinions and our thoughts. And you guys are extremely experiential in the conversation that we're going to have today. So, as we get started, how do you define reality in your own words?
Huh, this is a weird one. I'm jumping out there, but defining it in my own words, it is what is actually happening, whether you see it or not. Um, there are things that we believe are happening because of what we see in front of our face, but some things are happening behind closed doors. Whether that's big picture, small picture, whether that's at home, parents planning something behind your back that you think nothing is happening, that reality is that it's still happening. Um, so reality is not based upon your perception, but it's based upon what is actually taking place. That's the best way I could put it in my own words.
I like that, and if I may add too, I would say um, the raw, unfiltered, unlensed truth, right? Like I like everything that you were saying right there. So it's like I said, some things that could be going on in the background that you may not see, but it's still the reality, even though you may not be able to see whatever said reality is. So I think it's that raw, uncut truth that you may or may not be able to see. But just because you can't see it does not mean that it's not reality.
And just to jump in line with these brothers, I would say reality is what's actually happening, whether it be micro, macro, or however you want to term it, but what's actually happening, not just how you see it happening to you or to somebody else, but the actual events, the actual everything about it. Because sometimes you can take pieces and try to form a whole reality when that's not necessarily the reality, but it's just a little portion of it. So you made it the big picture when it's not. And I think, and that's what most people do. They take a small portion and they say, well, this is happening. Like, yeah, that's true, but what about add these other variables?
I like all of that. And listen, for everybody who's listening, if you have not hit that like button, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you have not shared it to your other platforms, please share it, because we're getting ready to get into it. Unc, you said something. You said something about just because you can't see it. What would prevent me in your mind? And this is just not just for Unc, but Unc, I want you to kind of start it off. What would prevent me from seeing something that you can see or that others people can see?
Ego.
Okay.
Ego. Ego is one thing that prevents people from seeing certain things. Sometimes you may have someone who's in a leadership position and they don't understand that how they're coming across as a leader with their maybe, I don't care about it, but sometimes tone of voice, sometimes demeanor, all of these different things that go into part of the communication when you're talking to your employees or subordinates and stuff like this. And someone would say, "Oh man, he's so mean, he's so nasty, he got a big ego, blah blah blah, all these different things." But I think sometimes when you're in those positions, not everybody, but sometimes even in the home, even as fathers and stuff like this, sometimes we let that ego to come around and we don't necessarily see things because our ego is blinding us or shielding us from seeing what is actually there.
I'll jump in with trauma or biases can
Trauma, yep.
definitely cloud how people see it because you seeing it through your trauma, you seeing it through your experiences. That's not everybody's experience. That's not everybody's trauma. So when you try to put everybody inside that box, it kind of nullifies the idea of reality because it's your reality. And if it's not yours, it really doesn't exist.
I was gonna say that term right there, my reality, your reality. Um, I believe the true definition of that term is just what I'm privy to seeing. That's when I say my reality. So my perceptions are based upon just the portion of reality that I can see. But when I believe that there's a my reality and your reality, it'll keep me from seeing the reality, even when it's in my face. 'Cause I think some things are hidden from us based upon perception versus it being covert, right? We could say that this was the plan behind the scenes and we only know it because it came out in full circle. But if they did it right in front of your face and told you what it was and you don't see it, it's because you don't believe that it's a part of your reality. And we're going to dig into this some more. So I like this question because my answer to this question, the rest of my answer to this question, I believe is in the rest of this conversation. So I'm going to hold my mute, right?
Yeah.
The only thing that I do want to add, the real small piece, is that I mean, as you can see, this is not as easy as just a one word sentence or a one word definition or a sentence or something like that. I think it's it could be a lot of things. It's kind of seen different. I think perspectives is a word that that probably can go into this at some point. So I think it's a lot of different things just to add on to it. I don't think it's simple.
Yeah. I like what everybody said. I love the ego. I love the trauma, and especially biases. I love the assertion of my reality, which kind of reminds me of the phrase of my truth, right? And I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make is we think our perspective of reality is, finite. right? It's there is no more infinite. There is, I'm sorry, not finite, but we think it's complete. I say it that way. We think our perspective of reality is complete. But one of the things I want to add to what you guys says is the information that I currently know. A lot of times, the information that I currently know will make it very difficult for me to see reality for what it is. But when I consider reality, reality is a complex and multifaceted concept that refers to the state of things as they actually exist, independent of perception or belief. And it encompasses both the objective world around us and the subjective experiences that shape our understanding of that world. So when we look at this blend of facts, perceptions, and interpretations, the perceptions and interpretations allow us to make sense of reality. And a lot of times what we end up doing is we take those perceptions and we think the perception by itself is reality. It is not. It is literally how you're viewing it at that particular point in time. So just because how you see it, it is true to you, it does not necessarily mean that it's true to somebody else. And I think that's the perfect place to start as we're starting to unpack this. And again, by all means, I want to start off by saying I know how we started this conversation off. And I know this conversation is directly to men, but it is for women. And if you guys remind me, I will make that make sense later on as we progress in this conversation. Because the first place I want to go is deconstructing the idea of natural nurturers. Now, I think to go along with that, there's a stigma or a stagnant thought, a stagnant myth that mothers are instinctive caregivers and fathers are accidental babysitters. And I think when we mentally process that, that resonates. That kind of resonates with a lot of the things that you hear and see. And so the tension between growing numbers and entrenched biases reflects a systemic lag, if you will. Economic realities evolve faster than cultural scripts about masculinity. As one dad summarized, we're told to man up and parent, but mocked when we do. What do you think about that?
So I will say for me, I didn't. So I'm speaking from my experience. I didn't get mocked when I was doing that, right? And that was just me personally. But for me, I was like, not that people bow down to me, but they was like, it was all positive stuff, as a man stepping up, not stepping up, but my sons wanted to stay with me. One of them, due to some stuff that was going on at his mom's house, it wasn't working out. So when he was in 10th grade, he came to stay with me, and then the other one, wasn't supposed to stay with me, but he came during the summer and I asked him about what was he doing for school, and he talking about I'm staying with you and I'm going to school over here. So I was just like, okay. So for me, I didn't get that. You know what I mean? So I'm very interested. I do have some thoughts about it, but before I speak about it, um, this is why I want to wait and go a little bit later on because those wasn't my experiences, as being a father and taking care of, kind of being a single father. I was, but I wasn't. Their mom was still an active participant in their life and stuff like this. She only stayed 20 minutes away. So I'm interested to hear what y'all say before I start going off on things that wasn't necessarily my personal experience.
Or your reality?
My reality, absolutely.
See, and I'm glad she put that because I was about to say that may be considered your reality, but it's a finite reality in a broad spectrum, right? Um, because and I tell you, I had both, right?
I agree.
You know, when I was fighting to try to get full custody of my two oldest, primarily because the fight was going on to where it was like, no, you need to have less and less and less and less time. So, the people that were in my circle was in my circle and they had my back. They didn't ridicule me, but the people in her circle was like, how dare he want access those are your kids, not his kind of concept. You know, the conversation was always my kids, my kids. And I used to have to be like, hey, I remember them nights. You weren't alone. So stop saying my kids. Right. Like, and that in itself became an argument because that's what was being pushed to her. You're a strong Black woman. Those are your kids. And it's like, I'm just the accessory that you carry on your arm. You just say, look, they got a father. And, or when it gets hard, that ability to say, oh yeah, he's not involved. I'm doing it all by myself. And so that's the battles that are being fought. Like, we have, it's a hard place to really get into, because it's like, who's the teachers? Because right now, a lot of people I know are layered of generations of single mothers teaching single mothers how to be single mothers, teaching single mothers and future single mothers. And I hate to say it that way. And so it was like, when do one person say, although I'm a single mother, I'm not going to teach my daughter to be this? But I digress.
I grew up in a strong matriarchy system where my great grandmother raised. I was the only boy in the house, so she established roles. You do all the outside chores, and y'all do the dishes. Y'all do the housework, and she instilled that in me. But then as I grew, I saw when I started to have children, like, oh, this don't necessarily work. Because I'm trying to take what she taught me and play it out in my house, where it was like, oh, look, I might need to do some of these things. And then I found myself where I was doing more of the quote unquote women's work. I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm washing clothes, I'm watching kids. So I would have the fellas, not these fellas right here, but those that I was growing up around, they looked at me, and then, when you do stuff like that, ignorance questions your manhood. So the instinctive nature in me said, take care of what needs to be taken care of. And, and it's not just, oh, well, it's your job to do this and your job to do that. I think that's one of those behaviors that were taught out of struggle and out of whatever it had to be. But I don't think that's what should be pushed on to people simply because it's a certain sex reality.
Yeah, I get it. I think, and I will start off by saying, even if, and this isn't a shot at you, Garfield, even if it's not your reality, we can't deny the information that it still exists. And I think from that perspective, understanding that it still exists, because you see it on social media all the time, and I seen one a day where, I guess the parents have separated, and the woman has a boyfriend that she's living with, and the father was bringing the son back, and so they were in the yard, just exchanging words, and she was like, those are my kids, and you're not going to see my kids anymore. And then the boyfriend tried to step in between, and, things like, it was just a hot mess. And I think, even though it may have been a skit, I'm not sure, I'm almost certain it was, because somebody was videotaping or whatever, but we can't deny that something like that is probably happening someplace. You may not have experienced it. I may not have experienced it to that degree, but by that same token, I think everyone can say they heard some mother say they're my kids, as though she has sole ownership over those kids. And I think that becomes problematic, being convinced that women are natural nurturers. And I'm not denying the fact that there are nurturing abilities there, but I also know that fathers have natural nurturing ability as well. It just does not look the exact same thing. And it's not supposed to look the same, because they're supposed to accentuate one another. So when we create these narratives that sounds like the complete and entirety of a thing, it is a false reality. And that false reality now becomes a person's mindset going into And I talk about the child. When the child hear it, it becomes their reality going into adulthood, and then that becomes well, it can. I'm not going to say it will. It can become their mindset moving forward. But like Roland said, I like that to where, at some point you recognize like this ain't right, this ain't right, this ain't right, and then you start to make the change. And at some point in time, I'm telling you, and I was talking about this earlier today. At some point in my life, I started not feeling right. I'm like, something about this isn't right. Something about the entirety of all of this stuff that I heard growing up, I seen with my own eyes, and at some point became a victim to. Like, it just wasn't right for me. And then I just started doing more digging, more researching, more education. I tell you, when it first changed for me, I was in Iraq, and I was looking up some information on the internet, and that's when I discovered, no joke, that a young girl's first encounter, and it's almost like something that you should know, but you just never thought about it. A young girl's first encounter of somebody of the opposite sex is through her father. And then that kind of catapults what relationships look like for her as an adult, whether it is a healthy relationship or whether it's a disjointed relationship. And a lot of times that disjointed relationship is a manifestation of the realities between that man and that woman when their relationship didn't work out. Unc, you had anything you want to add to? Because I know you said you were going to come back.
Yeah, I get all of that. I understand all of that. I see all of those different things like that on social media. So definitely, to your point to that, I do think that if we're going back to this myth part right here, I don't know. I guess I kind of wanted to. It was something that you and Roland had kind of said that I was thinking about, but then it just slipped my mind. Darn it!
Can I say why he gathered that?
Yeah,
Because
go ahead.
especially when you mentioned that skit, I didn't see now. All because it's a camera don't always mean it's a skit, because these jokes are recording everything nowadays, and they got perfect timing. It's like they catch you right in the good part of the argument. I don't know how they do it, but but just in case this gets shared to the right people, because we're talking about father's instinct of caregiving. If me and you having a spat about our kids, don't empower your boyfriend to get in the middle of that argument, because you're gonna empower your boyfriend to lay down. I'm trying to find the best way I can say it, because I know that I'm not right when it comes to stuff like this. I know once my sense of somebody put it in there, when emotions get high and everyone's loose, I know once that goes, I know I'm retarded. But I know there's people worse than me. Right? So with that said, stop empowering these boyfriends, because you don't understand the instinct that is in a father. We talk about mothers who gain this natural strength to save their kids and all that stuff. What do you think a father's natural instinct is when his fatherhood is under attack? Especially you put another man there to pretend like he's going to keep you from fathering your children. You're creating a very dangerous scenario, and I think no one talks about that enough. Like, I see it happen a lot. I've seen it happen with my family, women in my own family and my own friend circles growing up. I've seen it, and it's a dangerous scenario. Please stop creating those scenarios, because all it's going to do is cause for more black on black crime, or black men to do something to another black man.
This Father's Day is coming up. This is also Men's Mental Health Month as well. This is a month of June, and I know it may get overlooked. Matter of fact, where's the Men's Mental Health Pride at this year? I mean, Men's Mental Health Parade this year. Anybody know where it is? No, we don't got one. We don't get no parade.
Do we ever get one?
Guess not. So, darn it, where was I at? I done lost my train of thought again. I should have stayed on task. That's twice tonight.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why you do that? Shout out to Home Depot for never forgetting about Father's Day. Because I'm telling you, that's the only Father's Day commercial I ever see. But as we're starting to continue to unpack this, I kind of want to put out a few statistics.
Oh,
right? Okay.
I did get it. All right. So, to what Gaddy said, men's mental health. I get all of this stuff, and I understand what you're saying. But to that point, I also want to I also want to let men especially know this. The jail is full of men, and the graveyard is full of men who are sticking up for something that they felt and that they thought in the moment was the right thing to do. I would encourage any man. You can always walk away. You can always come back and revisit that boyfriend, that baby mama. You can always revisit that stuff later on down the road. It is not worth losing your life over. It's not worth going to jail over. You just what I think you have to do is you have to get a little bit more creative when it comes to your fathering skills. You know what I mean? No one can stop you from sending a card. No one can stop you from writing letters, whether or not they get them or not. When that child grows up, and I think all men want to know, especially if their father wasn't there. I think at some point, all men want to go and reconnect. And when they go back and reconnect, and you say, "Hey, look, it was a lot of drama and stuff going on, bro, and I couldn't go to jail because if I was in jail, I wasn't even going to be in your life even a little bit. So I chose to take a higher ground, step back, write you, send you cards and letters, and I'll say also, by the way, here's an account I started for you when you were 7 years old. All this went over here, all this is yours." So I do think that I understand exactly what Gaddy's saying. I understand the emotional piece and stuff like this. I get all of that stuff. I also understand that because of all of those things and popping off and crashing out and being in that moment and losing ourselves has also caused us, a lot of us, to be away from our children for a long time as well.
Yes, absolutely. Let me spit out some data real quick. Since 1970, stay-at-home dads have increased by 800%. While the 2.1 million stay-at-home dads in 2021, which is up from 1.1 million in 1989, represents a 91% raise, the 800% figure likely extends further back than what was previously discussed. All of this is probably driven by economic necessity as well as educational shifts. For example, raising children expenses or rising children expenses often exceed $1,500 a month per child, which make dual income households less financially viable. There is a 76% societal skepticism when it comes down to dads as well. Despite increased visibility, cultural biases persist. Public perception is only 8% of Americans believe children are better off with a stay at home dad versus 51% for moms. Then you also have these daily microaggressions to where 63% of at home dads are asked, "When will you get a real job?" or praised for basic tasks like grocery shopping. Then you have systemic oversight. Pediatricians default to mothers for medical updates 87% of the times, and only 12 countries offer equal parenting leave. Um, then the hidden reality that exists, which ultimately equates to identity crisis. Many describe explaining their value in social settings to avoid perceptions of laziness, with 41% hiding their role on professional networks like LinkedIn. The unintended consequences, well, the stigma discourages willing fathers. 58% of working dads want to stay home but fear judgment, while 22% of current at home dads plan to return to work permanently to regain societal statuses or social statuses. So, statistics, although can be in some degree skewed to paint a particular picture, I think there is also some relevancy behind those statistics as well. So to counter this concept of the mothers are instinctive caregivers and fathers are accidental babysitters, I think we need to transition to parental neuroplasticity, where brains rewire through caregiving, not chromosomes. Fathers' oxytocin spikes match mothers during active parenting. So, what does all of this really mean? Mothers, if you want your child's father to do better, consider doing better with him. That takes us to point number two, the fractal biases. Now, um, anybody, are you guys familiar with fractals? Okay. So, it's like It's like a geometric shape, a simple geometric shape that is repeated consistently in different arraignments to where it creates a larger picture, like a snowflake. They create snowflakes by simply with a simple triangle, and they just keep make doing the triangle, and they just keep turning it, and then eventually you will get the snowflake appearance. They just put it in different locations, but that's kind of like what a fractal is. And so, in essence, it is a systemic pattern where micro level, well, we're talking about fractal biases here, which ultimately equate to a systemic pattern where micro level prejudices, often dismissed as harmless or isolated, replicate and amplify into micro level inequalities through repetition across societal systems. And so I think that's a great place to be at and I'm just keep that going down there. I think that's a great place to be at when it comes down to this one, because now we get into a different myth. Maternal gatekeeping protects kids. Paternal involvement is optional. And I don't think there's any person under the sound of my voice that can deny and again, it's not a blanket statement for everybody, but I think even if you were not participating in something of this magnitude, you know of somebody who has. And so that being said, gentlemen, what are your thoughts here?
When it came for me, I think I recognize this not in my household now, but in my household overall, because my oldest three daughters were with my first wife, and then my oldest two came to live with me. And you can see the difference with the two that came to live with me versus the one that stayed, because her way of thinking is a little off. I mean, it is. It's more like her mother's side or whatever. But when it came to how to deal with men and how to deal with bills and certain structural things, my oldest two daughters were more prepared for that stuff, because we talked about the bills that came in the house. We talked about things. We taught them how to cook, and it was like certain things that you would think out of what we're talking about that a mother would do is what I was doing, because I was developing a relationship. No matter what society say I'm supposed to do, I got to develop a relationship with my children so that they're functioning adults, not so, oh, you just a functional woman or you just a functional wife. No, you got to be a functional adult. And I think when I looked at it like that, then it was all those little parameters that we tend to put around one another, they go away, and you can actually become a functional adult without falling to the pitfalls of how society say you should be as a woman.
I want to ask a clarifying question. What is, just to make sure I'm correct, is maternal gatekeeping keeping the child from one of the other parents? Okay, that's what I thought. All right, so based off of that, maternal gatekeeping is okay. Is maternal gatekeeping does protect the child, does protect the kids, but that I think is the exception. So I think that's the exception. So I don't want to talk about the exception. So I would just say that I think yes. I mean, I think no. I think what happened is when you do that and you think that what you're doing and you're keeping that child from that parent or those grandparents, because sometimes it's grandparents too. You know what I'm saying? And I think that what happens is when you do that, you keep the child from learning certain things, from being nurtured and getting that extra season on the meat or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Giving that extra input into the child. And I think you miss out on that when you do that. Like I said, I think there is exceptions. You know, if the father's off and he's doing something he ain't supposed to be doing, he into drugs and people shooting up the house and stuff like this. I understand, I get it. You know what I'm saying? But if that stuff is not going on, then I don't think that you are protecting the child by gatekeeping the child from the father. Now, when it comes to parental involvement is optional. Again, I think it's optional, but I think that is the exception. I think that parental involvement is not optional. I think that when you got two adults that at some point had the idea, at least in most cases, they both agreed that they were going to get together, maybe not necessarily agree or mature enough to handle what happened, but at some point they decided they were going to get together. And from that, a child came. So I think that in most cases, you have to have the child involvement. So parental involvement is not optional. I think, you need to have both of them there in order to produce the best child in most cases.
Now let me grab something you said, because you said paternal involvement is optional, and I know you said that's the exception. But could you
Mhm.
give me an example when paternal involvement is optional?
Paternal involvement is optional. I think that we have a lot of cases where we have celebrities and we have people to where there's only been one parent, and then the child, or you got Tyler Perry's and the Oprah Winfrey's and different people who always talked about as having one parent, and still been able to be successful and stuff like that. So, like I said, I think those are just the exceptions to the rule. I think in most cases they don't work out. But I think those are two examples that I can think of.
Yeah, see, those exact two, and I got a point, but the fact you use those two specifically,
I'm only using them
I,
because
I
people
know
can easily recognize them. That's the
because
only reason.
no, and
Yeah,
I get what you're saying, because
yeah,
we're judging success based upon money in that case, because
yeah. Only money.
both of them, all the movies that both of these uh icons that we just mentioned always paint fatherhood and black men, especially dark-skinned black men, as abusers of women every time. And and though they are quote unquote successful, but we can see that their perception of life is skewed. That's the only way they know how to make entertainment, is by demonizing the black male. And I hate to say it that way, but the numbers show.
I
you
think
know,
I think you're right, but I also think that there is an audience for it, and that's a part of also the reason why, because they're about making money. They're in the business, so somebody's watching it.
I like how Coach did that because you two are talking about exactly what he just said before with the fractal bias.
yeah,
That's where that comes from because they have trauma, they have this, and what they do is they emulate it in their life and in their movies and everything. So now the depiction of parenthood to them looks like that. Or since this was traumatic for me when I was coming up, now I'm going to show this in a different light over here because of my fractal bias. Because, like he was saying, with the, I think he made some snowflake or something like that.
yeah.
Because now you take little pieces and now you put together as a whole, and now it may look like a lot of money, but it's a lot of damage that has been done.
But here's the crazy thing that Unc just said too. He said that there's an audience for it. But we're talking about a generation. He's selling to a generation of single mothers who came from a generation of single mothers. Like the generation he started selling to were raised by mothers who baby fathers or husbands were in prison, mass incarceration, or strung out due to the drug epidemic. Like this is the generation that raised them. And so why are we looking at a generation of absent fatherhood and saying it destroyed us, it jacked us up, so let's continue it? And that's what I see when I see this statement. Is like we've taken a trauma that has hurt our community in large, and now our women wear it as a badge of honor, to the point to where now young women don't feel like strong black women if they're not doing it by themselves. I hear it all the time. Oh, I need my kids to know that I'm a boss bee. What that mean? I mean, that means I didn't need no man to do. And then what? The next generation, we're gonna keep repeating this, and then you're gonna get on social media and say, men ain't men no more. Men ain't you literally told your whole generation of men to stop being men so you can be men.
and they teach their sons to be what? The
Exactly.
same. Either soft, effeminate, or go in the other direction, looking for
Right.
me.
Right. Or abusers.
And I think the big problem here, and I'm not making it about Tyler Perry and I'm not making it about Oprah, right? But I think the big problem here is that there is a large audience that he has. That's the problem. I don't care if he's a billionaire. Like that doesn't move me. That doesn't excite me, right? I'm not a fan of his. But the fact that there is a large audience who is looking for that helps us to have a better understanding of the systemic mindset that we have in our community. But yet we're screaming and hollering about why our community is disjointed, because we are a part of perpetuating the cycle of the disjointedness of the community. So until we recognize that, until we get to the point of recognizing that, okay, look, we are carrying on the division in the community and passing it on as a thing of legacy, there lies the problem. And then I got it. These people were probably handpicked, whatever, got it. And they were the ones. And let's just be honest. If we don't believe that the media industry is strategically working their magic behind the scenes, you're crazy. We're crazy but if you just believe that, oh, this person pulled themselves up out of bootstrap and they came out the mud and no, it don't work that way. Trust me, you had to have a story. You had to have a plan. Once that plan fit their narrative, now you got a platform. And that's ultimately how it worked. And I'm not saying that they didn't work hard. That's not what I'm saying. Right. But I know a lot of people, back where I grew up at, they worked hard too. And guess what they got for it? A lot of the stuff that we're talking about. So I think we got to be completely honest with ourselves, strip ourselves of all biases. And I know that's hard to do. Strip ourselves of all the biases and look at the information as it is objectively. And if you look at the information as it is objectively, I do not believe that there's one person who would deny the fact of what we're saying right now. It is clear. It is obvious. It is blatant. I'm telling you, there's a movie out right now. And I was just talking about this earlier today as well. There's a movie out right now. And well, let me just ask you to find distinguished gentlemen, because I know you know the answer. Stop it. William Shakespeare is known for two, it's many more than two, but he is very famous for a play that he wrote years ago. Could you guys just name it?
Which one? Romeo and Juliet?
Romeo and Juliet. Yes, Romeo and Juliet. There's a movie out right now called Juliet and Romeo. I wonder why. Like, only thing you got to do is pay attention. It's all in our face, and we're just not even recognizing it. The Woman King. Like, come on, let's be real. And again, it's not saying that, oh, woman get down. That's not what we're saying. But pay attention, because the media is part of the divide. And if we're not honest with ourselves and seeing it, then we're just missing the mark and thinking, oh, all is well. But it's affecting your psyche. It has now become the replacement of Walt Disney. Walt Disney did it when you was a child. Now the big screen movie industry is doing it while you're an adult. And it's just continuing the same thing that Walt Disney started back then.
Can I
Did you have any Cracker Jills?
Wait, what?
No Cracker Jacks? No Cracker Jacks, right? Everybody remember Cracker Jacks?
Yeah.
You know, you can buy Cracker Jills.
What is that?
Same thing. It just, instead of say Cracker Jack, it say Cracker Jill on it.
Oh, okay.
Jack and Jill.
I got it. I finally got it. I was a little slow on the draw just now.
Yeah,
but yeah, I got it now.
They made Cracker Jills now. So you can go buy Cracker Jacks or buy Cracker Jills. If you don't like the Jacks.
Here's the thing. I ain't got a problem with
right in front of the face.
Yeah, I ain't got a problem with Cracker Jill if that's what you came up with originally. But why are we purposely trying to? There's a difference between I came up with this Cracker Jill, and then we have to replace the male names with the female names, and then scream that we in a bad patriarchal system. This system ain't been patriarchal in a long time. But what you just said, Coach, flip me back to 2018. I remember I was on a contract in JBLM, and Aretha funeral was taking place, and Pastor Jasper Williams was preaching. And all the women came up to me. You a preacher? What you think about this foolishness he said? And when I tell you they didn't talk to me the rest of the contract, because what he said, and I don't go quoting Jasper Williams for the record. I just want to put that out there. but he a cool hooper if you like that. But what he said was biblical. He was talking about the state of fatherhood in America, and he preached and he made a statement that really set him off. He says that children being raised without fathers are spiritually stillborn. Messed everybody up. He said, because what you've done, once you've taken the order of God out of the picture, you've taken God out of the picture. And because we teach this matriarchal system so strongly, we believe that the women can replace the headship of the father in the picture, in the spiritual picture as well. When in fact, we just really destroyed the entire order of the Most High. For God so loved his order that now I'm gonna leave that out the way because back to that word thing I was doing Friday Sunday. but when we look at that scripture, that's what he's saying. And when we go back to the beginning, Paul even tells us in the New Testament, he says that he created man for God, woman for man, right? Now, of course, it ain't saying, I know we like to argue, oh, ain't no man over me. We're talking about the way that the Father has set it up. And then once we go on this attack to remove fatherhood, we remove the covering that's supposed to connect us to the Father. But now we've put the father down here and the mother up here, and now she's covered. Is she covering the man? Because if so, then he defiled his head, which is the father. So we got a lot going on, and then we wonder why it destroyed an entire community, because we've taken the order of the Most High and himself and laugh in his face. I'm gonna leave that alone.
But you're not wrong. I'm a transition, same space though. I'm a transition just a little bit because I think it's important for us to talk about the job market. So countries with equal parental leave, such as Sweden and Iceland, see paternal involvement rise 250%. The increase comes from structured equal parenting leave systems. This does not include the United States, by the way. And here's how it is broken down, because I think this is just, it's mind-numbing, really. So the Nordic policy mechanics states that 480-day split. So fathers must use 90 days, which is referred to as daddy months, which is 30% of the total leave, or they forfeit their paternity leave altogether in its entirety. But then you have a 6 + 6 month quota, right? And the 6 + 6 month quota mandates an equal split via use it or lose it, designed with a 80% salary coverage. And I think this is an important concept to consider, because ultimately the results are daily paternal caregiving time tripled in these countries since this reform. And the children of involved dads show a 23% higher school engagement and 18% lower behavioral issues. U.S. contrast, 0 federal paid paternity leave. States offering paid programs, though, such as California and New York. So it's like only an 8% uptake by fathers versus an 87% by mothers. So workplace stigma causes 51% of U.S. fathers to take less than 1 week leave because of paternity. So I think we have to encounter or consider the transformational truth here. And the transformational truth is fractal equity, micro biases, assuming dads can't pack lunches, scale into macro harms, custody disparities. So the big takeaway of all of this is mandatory quotas in Nordic system drive behavioral change, but the collaborative parenting approach is absent in voluntary U.S. frameworks, which now takes us to point number 3, energy apartheid. And you guys, I know you guys are familiar with apartheid. So I get it. and we got to give our women some love. I just want to put it out there. Motherhood is exhausting, right? I get that part. And the stigma here is that fatherhood is like a side hustle. So working moms do 65% more childcare. Working dads face 40% higher flexibility stigma. And so when you consider it, you have to consider it from the perspective of like the couple being together and the couple not being together. So gender roles and systemic gaps, lack of affordable childcare and equal pay force mothers to bear the burden of childcare labor. Data shows that working mothers now invest time equivalent to that of 1970 stay-at-home moms despite being employed. Divorced parents, though, mothers often retain primary custody 82% of the times, which intensifies their child care responsibility. Post divorce, they experience time poverty as they balance jobs, child care costs, and societal judgment for perceived inadequacy in their role. Fathers, especially non-custodial dads, may disengage due to visiting schedules, but those that share custody face heightened logistical challenges. Working dads face 40% higher flexibility stigma. Men who request caregiving accommodations, leaving early for school pickup, often face perceptions of being uncommitted. Only 21% of managers view paternal flexibility needs as legitimate compared to 68% for maternal moms. Um, Divorced parent nuances for dads face a double stigma. Dads are judged for failing as breadwinners and scrutinized for their parenting competence. Only 19% receive workplace support like emergency child care case access compared to 43% of single moms. Non-custodial dads often denied flexibility. Why do you need time off if you don't have full custody? Which reinforces cycles of disengagement. Again, childcare costs 55% of working parents can't afford childcare without subsidies, disproportionately impacting mothers and divorced parents. Only 12% of U.S. employers offer backup childcare, forcing parents, especially moms, to make career sacrifices or engage in unsustainable masking. System inertia entrenches inequity. Mothers face penalties for caregiving duties. Fathers are punished for challenging norms, and divorced parents are excluded from support systems designed for nuclear parents. Gentlemen, what saith ye?
I'm going to back up a little bit and start back when I was in the military. When I was in the military, I had all three of my sons while being in the military. So, and I was only there for the second one due to a whole bunch of other stuff. But I was there for Quasi, and Quasi is now 23 years old. And I remember, and then the first one. So Brandon, I had Brandon out of wedlock. I had him in 1995, right? So I was a young private, but I didn't have that paternity leave, females and stuff, but we didn't have any in the company then. But when I came back in and had females, they had kids and they were gone for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, seemed like forever they was gone. They come back in, you like, hey, who are you? You forgot this person was in the company because they was gone for so long. And I was always like, I didn't understand how come I couldn't get leave. You know what I mean? Like, how come I can't stay at home? I'm just like, hey, this lady just had a baby. She's been carrying this child for 9 months. She's at home. She's tired. She don't want to lift all of this stuff. In a lot of cases, women have stitches and stuff like this. They got a lot of stuff going on. And for only to allow me to go home for a week, it just wasn't enough. And even before, not only does that child needs that male nurturing, but all the other things that need to go on in the house too. You know what I'm saying? So what if you got other kids? So I just remember that we just didn't have a lot of time and we didn't have paternity leave. So I will say that now, my oldest son, who is 30 now, he had 2 kids while he was in the military, and Haley, who will be 3 this year in October. No, she'll be 4. Well, when he had her, he had paternity leave. So he had 12 or 16 weeks off. So definitely shout out to the military for changing. But now all of that to back to this question, I do think in a lot of cases, even back then, in a lot of things, just how things are in society, this is how it looked at. You know what I mean? Motherhood is exhaustion. You know what I'm saying? And fatherhood is a side hustle. You know, your daddy get here when he get home from work, whenever he get to it and stuff like that. And it's just something that we do on the side. And I don't necessarily think that way. I think that nurturing just looks different from mother and dad. You know, we just nurture differently. So I know I've kind of long-winded, so let me pause right here and give someone else the floor.
Yeah, I don't know when your kids were born, but when I joined in 2003, I could tell you from the S1 perspective, paternity leave existed.
You had it in 03?
It existed. I granted some, not granted some, but I had filed some. I put them in the staff duty log. They came through S1. It existed. Commands just didn't care. And that's where I was going to go concerning this. So you going to the military, I was going there. You know, they get commands had a certain amount of discretion. Oh, we got field problems. We got this. We got that. I was in Iraq when my oldest was born. You know, I went home a little early. I just redeployed. I've redeployed probably like a few weeks before everyone else. And the excuse was because I took emergency leave because my mother passed that deployment too. So, but they did try to find a way to get me home, but I still didn't get that 6 weeks and it was 6 weeks back then. Now I think the fathers get almost
12 weeks as of December 27th, 2022.
12 weeks?
You get 12 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the mothers have went up even further than what they used to get, you know. And then their recovery time, I think, is now probably about a year now. I think their recovery time after they come off of maternity leave. But it might be different. I'm not looking at it, but that just the policy alone shows for fathers, commanders get discretion, though the regulation affords it, right? Mothers is going to get it, right? And I get it because they're going through the birth process. Their body is coming back, is bouncing back together. So not taking anything away. But I think I might have told this story before, but I had a battle buddy. He lives here in Killeen now. We used to call him Jersey. He was from Jersey. It was me, him, my other homeboy. He was from Philly, and I was from New York, and we just all used to kick it, doing both deployments. And Jersey, on the first deployment, I remember his wife was pregnant. She was a high risk. Her feet swelled up. She couldn't even get out the bed because her feet had swollen up so bad. Doctors noting everything, saying that she cannot get up. Now, remind you, they had just had a baby. They went back to back. So they still got an infant in the house that she can't care for. And they're pretty much telling him that she's going to figure it out because she's a mother. You're a father, you get to work. And then that was pretty much the mindset of the unit. You know, the artillery guys are just hardcore like that. I'm just, you're not gonna message you, but that was his scenario. They expected him to go to NTC and deploy and just abandon that situation and leave his wife there, incapable to care for herself. He was bathing her, he was helping her, and a lot of stuff. I'm so glad I didn't put his real name out there because I know that's a lot. But to the point to where he was like, forget it, I'm going AWOL until my wife is good. They pretty much told him you wasn't gonna get it. He went AWOL, and he came back after the baby was born, just in time to get on that bird. And they sure enough did. He had a court martial. They gave him 30 days. He got out early so he can get on the bird and deploy. So you can deploy me when I'm supposed to be sentenced, but you can't let me take care of my family.
I think this stagnant myth, motherhood is exhaustion and fatherhood is a side hustle. It's a reality to a certain group, a certain sect. So because we allow this narrative to continue to be pushed, and some of us push it, well, that's the mama's job, or that's the daddy's job, or he ain't gonna do that. What we were talking about earlier, and you choose someone who you knew he ain't kicking with his other kids that he got with that other woman, but you expect him to be there for yours. Oh, he gonna change because you think you're gonna change him, and society pushes the narrative that it's a mother's job to nurture. It's a mother's job to do whatever it is that the kids to go to school functions, to be there, to do lunches, as if we are inadequate. And some of us say, "Hey, I don't want the role." So I want the role of that dude that just sit on the outside when she having a baby and come in and say, "Hey, you had it? Okay, I'm gonna smoke a cigar." Not looking at the responsibility of parenthood. See, I think we look at motherhood, fatherhood is parenthood, but we allow society to separate it to where I'm gonna give you a job and you got a job over here, and we don't cross pollinate thinking like, "Hey, I may have to nurture at some point. I may have to cook. I may have to clean." But I look at it as a demeaning role per society because hey, that's women's work. No, that's parenthood. So I think that when we stop allowing society to come into our homes and separate us there, then it won't separate us in society. It won't separate us on platforms. It won't separate us wherever we go. But since we do, that's why you see you'll get on any social media outlet and you'll see us bickering back and forth about what we should and shouldn't be doing with one another.
Yeah, I agree. It just kind of reminds me of my phrase I use at work all the time. There is no such thing as officer business or NCO business, it's leader business. And I think the same thing should be processed when it comes down to parenting. Because we believe that mother's labor when it comes down to a child is expected and father is charity. But I think the notion is that we need to, like, I get the whole titles thing, but don't allow the title to disrupt the potential of harmony happening within a household. Because sometimes, and again, I got what jobs are saying, I got what jobs are doing, and I got the fact that, paternity leave is not readily accessible in some cases as easily as maternity leave. But at the end of the day, if I got to take leave, just take leave. I don't think you should allow that to be the deciding factor. All right, next is vulnerability bind. And moms cried, dad solved, right? And so I think when we look at this particular one, um, fathers who openly discuss caregiving challenges receive man up dismissals 3 times more often than encouraged due to cultural scripts, patriarchal norms framing emotional openness as weakness. Real men handle it alone. Custody biases. Courts granting mothers primary custody 82% of the times subconsciously cast fathers as secondary parents undeserving of sympathy. Divorce father nuances. Non custodial dads, those within visitation rights, face accusations of faking concern from ex partners when discussing parenting stress. Online posts reveal phrases like, "How hard can it be? You only see them every other weekend." Or custodial dads, sole guardianships, face toxic positivity. "You're a hero." Or you hear statements like, "Oh," masking systemic neglect, lack of divorced dad support groups compared to single mom networks. Then we have systemic triggers. Legal systems, child welfare agencies fail to involve fathers in 68% of cases, even when active, breeding isolation and silencing struggles. And then, as we previously talked about, workplace policies. Divorced dads requesting schedule flexibility for custody arrangements face 25% higher job loss risks than never married fathers. Impact on the children. Fathers' internalized man up pressures show 40% reduced communication with kids post divorce, 2.5 times higher likelihood to default to Disney dad overcompensation, gifts over guidance. Gentlemen, what saith ye?
True statement. Let's move to the next question, please. No, I'm kidding. If I was actually when I see this, and I know it says moms crying, dad soft, but if I was to look at this, I just think that they're talking about the maybe that women or moms may be more nurturing, maybe more emotional, and dads may be more logical, and maybe more to solve problems or whatever like this. So, and I know this is a myth right here, but I think it is a myth. But I think that there may be there's some truth to this, and I think it may have something to do with. And I understand that we're all parents and we're all can play certain parts in each roles, you know what I mean? But I also think that there are some difference. I think that naturally we're wired differently about certain things, and certain things that moms tend to do, dads may not do, and vice versa. So I also, at the end of the day, yes, I think this is a myth, but I do think that there's definitely some truth that is here, but not based off of literally what it says, moms cry and dads solve. I'm going to say moms more emotional, more nurturing, dads more solving, more logical. And that's my 2 cents for this part of it.
As we progress, I don't necessarily want to focus on that. I
Okay.
mean, I get that part. I want to focus on like all of these stats that I just read. Non-custodial dads, visitation rights, toxic positivity, the legal system, child welfare system don't involve fathers in 68% of the cases. Divorced dads requesting schedule flexibility for custody arrangements face 25% higher job loss risk. So those things specifically.
Yeah, like child support. Well, I think the whole child support system needs to be revamped. I think I ain't gonna say that. I'm gonna leave that part alone. But I don't, and I understand, like when if a guy, and this goes back to something that somebody was talking about earlier, and how relationships with the child's father, child's mother may be. If you don't pay child support in certain cases, sometimes a woman like, well, you ain't pay your child support, so you can't see your child. Well, I get that, but your rent be late sometimes, you know what I'm saying? So don't act like, I'm just saying the rent be late and you still stay in your house. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm a couple days late on child support, I should still be able to see my child. Again, my youngest is 20. This ain't applying to me. But I have seen situations where that has been the case. The father's a little bit short on the child support. He didn't pay all of it or something like this, and then now all of a sudden, he don't have access to his child. Now, I will tell you this: I am a proponent of fathers being a financial participant in the child's life. I'm all for that. How it looks, we can have a whole conversation about that. But I do think that the way the child system, the way the child, not child care, but way the child support system is currently worked is not, I don't think it's good for men. I think there's probably some good stuff in there, but I think it's been weaponized. People make money off of it, and I just don't think it's fair. And I just think that men have no way out of that. And I don't think that that's always fair. I don't think that once that happens, they have a choice. But I do think that at some point the woman did have a choice. But like again,
The
that's another conversation.
the Friends of the Court system works perfectly. It works perfectly for the system. The system of breaking up the family,
100%.
the system of making the man the bad guy, the system of taking the mother and father and putting them at, now they are enemies, they aren't parents. See, if the system was working properly, the system would first and foremost teach them parenting. See, instead of just saying, okay, how much you make? Okay, we're gonna take 60% of that. And then you over here looking at him as a check. The kids over here looking at him as a check, or looking at him as a deadbeat, or whatever the case may be. The system, see, when we allow the system to get in our business, get in our homes, that's when the problems arise, especially when with a community. Because when we're looking at community, if we're saying we're community, even if we have a kid, we don't get along. That's fine. We should have others to come and say, okay, this is how things work. Yes, the kid needs this. Yes, the kid needs it. You only make this. You only make that. Let's make it work together. See, that's community, but we don't do that. We go and let friends of the court. I remember when the dude in the wheelchair of the state of Texas, when them letters used to come to my house, and I'm paying $1,800+ a month, and I'm like, God, dog. That taught me how to budget. That's where budgeting first started for me, because I'm like, okay, I'm paying $1,800. I only got this to live, and I know that's already gone. But then I'm hearing, Daddy, I need some shoes. Daddy, I'm taking this. Daddy, I'm taking that. And then so it messes with a man's psyche when he can't provide those things, because he look like, some people say it, but I never did. I never said, well, I sent this to your mama, ask her for it. I tried to make it happen. But that's where the system pits us against one another. And I think it needs a total overhaul, because it's not working for the children or the parents. It's working for the system of oppression.
Yep.
Man, y'all took a lot of meat off that bone. But the way I'm looking at it, I'm listening to all these statistics, and I'm replaying the reality what I was exposed to, right? Both as a father and growing up, just of seeing and hearing. And that's one of the things I always tell women: these men hear what you're saying. These boys you raise and hear how you talk about men, and that's what they believe they are. So they either never mind. But what I realized is this system. You said it works perfectly how it's designed, but what it does is it gives mothers the power to do, say, and treat men however they want to, especially once they have children. Because listen to those statistics, and they throw them up in your face too. You do this. I bet you won't see your kids. I bet you I take 40% of your paycheck. I bet you I do this. I bet you won't see your kids. And I bet. Knowing also that the police system works in the favor of the mother as well. I think I don't know who I was talking. I think it was Coach I was talking to, and we was like, well, if the mother takes the kids across country, can the father? Legally, yes, but if the cops are called, they'll go hunt that father down, lock him in jail, even though no charges to be filed. But them kids are going to get drugged right back to the mama, because the perception of the system. Legally, the father can do the same thing the mama did. Legally, if they're married and there's no court order giving one primary custody, but we already know what happened. And so it gives that mother the power to hold all these things over the father's head. If you want to be in your child's life, you just fall in line. And once again, it tilts the order. It reverses the order versus us being in harmony.
Let me add more to this, because I think someplace somebody is still not getting the gravity of all of it. And so what I want to do is focus now on the resources, right? There are only 6 U.S. states that mandate dad-focused divorce resources versus 49 with mom-centric programs, which reveals a systemic policy failure rooted in outdated assumptions about caregiving roles. Programs for dads specifically addressing fathers' needs during divorce, such as legal guidance for custody battles. Men lose 82% of those contested cases. Parenting workshops on post-divorce father-child bonding, and mental health support for paternal isolation. Divorced dads have 3 times higher suicide risks. For mothers, as previously stated, there are 49 states, right? And so services like domestic violence shelter, custody advocacy, child subsidies defaulted to mothers, reinforcing the primary parent stereotype. But when I changed the narrative to the divorced parent consequences, a father's lack of tailored resources leads to custody losses of 78% of non-custodial dads cite not knowing how to navigate family court, Financial penalties. Courts impute higher potential income to fathers, triggering unrealistic child support orders. Mothers are overburdened as de facto sole caregivers due to paternal disempowerment, worsening paternal burnout. So, on a micro level, what you'll find is the gaps. Non-state funded coaching for dads on arranging post-divorce visitations scaled into macro harms. 67% of divorced dads lose regular contact with kids within 3 years versus 25% of moms. Children with disengaged fathers, often policy force, shows 19% lower academic performance. Root cause, lawmakers, and I'll put it on the screen so everybody can see it as it goes. Root cause is ultimately lawmakers misdiagnose paternal needs as niche, despite 40% of U.S. households having non resident fathers. Programs for moms dominate funding cycles due to historical gender roles, ignoring modern custody reality. This imbalance entrenches inequity. This imbalance entrenches inequality across generations. Until policies reflect that fathers also need divorce scaffolding, equal parenting remains a myth. So I think that's important for us to understand. Key takeaway: divorced fathers face compounded stigma, dismissed as unfit if struggling or overbearing if advocating, a systemic trap undermining child outcomes. So I think the key for us is to, like I think somebody said in the chat, we need to find a way to work together. Get them people out of our system, like Roland said, because at the end of the day, those kids belong to us. They should not be telling us how we should go into it. Any other thoughts before we go into this last point, gentlemen?
I will say I definitely agree with that. When you going through that divorce and you going through this stuff, if you can keep the court systems out of it, it makes y'all can work through it and get it and do it on your own. It makes things a whole lot easier. Whole lot easier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, gentlemen, last point, and I think what I want to do is kind of wrap this up. We're going to go through this last point real quick. I'm not going to give any statistics for this because of the time, but I also want to leave you gentlemen with the opportunity to have final thoughts as well. And so the last point here, we gotta rewrite the outcome of legacy. Like I said it before, the things that we're passing down is not working. If we're not understanding that yet, look at how many of the young adults who are actually seeking to marry. Look at how many of them are choosing to stay single because they do not want to be a part of the statistics that we talked about tonight. So the stagnant myth here is fatherhood is a role, motherhood is an identity. I just want to put that out there. When you hear that concept, fatherhood is a role, motherhood is an identity. What thoughts come to you, gentlemen, mind?
Oh, fatherhood is a role, motherhood is an identity. Just pretty much saying that parenting is what mothers do, is who they are. Fathers, it's nice to have. It encompasses everything we talked about today to me, right? It's just a role you play. You show up sometimes. You do this. It's not who you are. It is not the makeup of who you are. And I think that once we get back into the idea of fathers being available, hence the concept of the available man. That's where my mind went when I came up with that concept, because we have to break the mindset that men aren't available. Men aren't really parents. Men are just nice to have around. No, men are, to be available means to be there, to have to go after the resources needed to be what you need to be to your family, to your children, to your community. We have to get out of this if the man don't show up mindset, everything is going to be all right because mama got it. Well, don't nobody say if daddy don't show up, if mama don't show up, don't worry, daddy got it. People going to say, oh, you can't raise that child without no mama. You can't take the kids away from their mama. You can't. They'll put all these things out there. But when it comes to the father, don't worry, mama got it.
I think this is the same. It's just like in the episode of Martin when Martin and Gina, they were having problems. And then Martin, he was straight up with her. He told her it was only two places she needed to be in the house, the kitchen or the bedroom, Gina. This is the reverse of that. Because when you allow your small realities to come to fruition in your little space and you make it the big picture for everybody else, that's what you think. You start thinking that her place is the kitchen or the bedroom. Your place is out there working and you're just the provider, and motherhood is an identity and fatherhood is just a role you play. See, if fatherhood is not my identity, don't call me father, because it's not just a role I play, it's who I am. And as father, I may have to do certain things and you may have to do certain things, but as family, we work together so that the children are raised properly, so that they aren't missing a beat, not so that they have more of you or more of me. See, when we start nickeling and diming and saying who's doing more, what, and okay, well, I was doing it. I did more cooking. I cooked last week. No, what needs to be done? Let's get together to make it happen and learn some type of communication to where we can come together so that what's best for the family happens. Not what's best for you, not what's best for me, but what's best for the family so that the children can grow up in a healthy environment.
So I like this. But I like it as, so when I see this is how my mind works. When I see fatherhood as a role, I see this absolutely. It's just one of the roles that I do as a man, as a father. And when I look at motherhood as an identity, I think that even if I have to put fatherhood in there, I am a father. So being a father and fatherhood is part of my identity. It's not who I am, but it is one of the many hats that I wear. That's how I look at this. Fatherhood is a role, yes, but in order to be in that role, I'm thinking that I at least have to be identified, not that it has to be my identity, but I at least have to be identified as a father to be in that fatherhood role, whether it's by me, whether it's by the child, the baby mama, whoever. I don't know who gets to dictate, to me who that father is, that I'm the father. But that's kind of how I look at it. The fatherhood is a role, but it's just one of the roles that I do as a father. You know what I'm saying? And then as motherhood as identity, I think that yes, that's just part of who a mother is. That's not who she is in total. She's much more, and she's more than just a mother. That's just one part of her identity. So that's kind of how I looked at this stagnant myth here.
Gad, did you go already, bro? Okay. Um, yeah, I struggle with this one. I'm be honest with you. Um, because at the end of the day, I've been saying this for years now, and I'm gonna continue to say it, that there is an attack on the father, and it's manifesting itself through the way that we view fatherhood. Like your notion of fatherhood is your only real life example of how you view a father. So in essence, if me communicating with my father, being with my father, loving my father and all that other great stuff, if that's an option, then how can I honestly say that I actually love the father? That just doesn't make sense. And so I don't see it as a role. I don't. Once you become a father, that's who you are, right? That's who you are. And if I accept it as a role, then my role can be changed at any point in time. But if that's who I am, no one gets to adjust that for me except for the one who blessed me with the opportunity to be a father. And I'm not talking about the one who birthed the child. I'm talking about the father himself. So that's how I see it. And so I think for me, this is a huge, huge myth because it's almost as though the myth is exactly how it's purported in society. Motherhood carries a higher value than fatherhood, and it should have never escalated to that point. And in my mind, the way that we change these things, the way that we change these myths and concepts is by getting to the point of just complete. I say we complete overall, we overhaul the whole system, right? We have to redefine fatherhood as something that shapes the futures of both child, son and daughter. Because when the father is an option, what you don't necessarily know is that that child suffers for years until they get to the point of putting the pieces together or reconnecting with the father on their own. When at the end of the day, you could have saved that child years of suffering by swallowing your pride, going back to what Garfield said in the beginning, putting your ego aside, and then trying to make amends for the sake of the child. You made some grown up decisions that led to conceiving that child. Now make some grown up decisions when it comes down to taking that child, taking care of that child. So greatly appreciate your thoughts. Greatly appreciate what everybody's putting in the chats, man. And trust me, we seen it, but it was just so much that I wanted to get through because I wanted to make sure that we got these 5 points. Crystal Everett, we greatly appreciate your support and thank you so much for what you're doing in the community as well. But as always, this takes us to that bittersweet moment where we get to the point of giving our final thoughts.
I think tonight we had another great informative show. You know, the show was called Five Mindset Shifts That Transform Your Reality. One thing I would suggest is going back and rewatching it. I know that I think that's something that I probably need to do to help, you know, have a little bit more understanding. Sometimes when you get new information, it's a good idea to go back and go back and rewatch certain things and go back and relook at it again. But you know, to the my final thoughts is, you know, we don't always we don't know, and sometimes we can't see certain things in us, and we can't see reality of everything. So I would just say that be open-minded sometimes when someone may come to you and may address something to you, because you may not be able to see it, and don't be so egotistical or so whatever to whereas you're not open to certain information that may that may in essence make you a better human and may make you a better person. So just if I would just say one word, and it would just be open-mindedness, and that is my final thought for this week.
I don't have a soliloquy for my final thoughts. Just simple. I'm a father. I matter. It's important that I'm not only visible but present. Mothers, you are important, but they need we, not you versus me. Like, we got to kill that. We got to come together. And I'm gonna stick with what my brother said. Get the system out of our business, and let's make our business the father's business, and let's get this thing together. That's my final thoughts.
Man, these brothers went quick tonight. Make sure that when you have people in your life, they're more concerned with family, because we've all been associated with groups, with organizations, to where you will hear that question at a certain part of service, and it has, will a man rob God? And sometimes those organizations may be more concerned with your finance over your family. So when it comes to the growth of the family, the structure of the family being part of community, and it being a strong force, it takes those individuals that made the child has to be in that child's life. Now, if something happens where it can't, that's understandable, because we all know males and females who just didn't hit the mark. Yeah, but that's not an excuse to downplay or put that person down. It's an opportunity for you to teach. It's an opportunity for you to learn. It's an opportunity to say, okay, This cannot be the norm. Don't make the negativity the norm. Make what's done to enhance the family structure, to bring about if y'all didn't work out, you and the missus or you and the husband didn't work out, it's not your opportunity to bash that person. It's your opportunity to grow a relationship and say, hey, we didn't work out like this as adults, but we gonna adult and parent these children to where they are proper functioning adults and can be proper functioning parents to their children, because we got to do better. That's it in a nutshell.
I greatly appreciate this conversation. I appreciate everybody's input. I said in the beginning that this conversation it was two men, but it was for women. And here's why I said that. I really do believe that the foundation of our community is the family. And if in any uncertain terms, if we can't figure out how the family is supposed to function together, the community will continue to suffer. So it requires us to change the assumptions that we have that are rooted in the decisions that we're making. There is an assumption, there is an idea, there is a thought, information that someone told me, something someone taught me when I was younger, whether it was through their behavior or through the words that they shared with me, whether they talked bad about my dad or whether they talked bad about my mom, whatever that looks like. That's the thing that is foundational in the way that you behave today. So my challenge to everybody else is to, number one, if you find yourself in the space of anything that we talked about today, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It's still time to fix it. I don't care if that child is 45 years old. If that child is 45 years old and you're still listening to us and you know without a shadow of a doubt, and this is not me saying that you had to be a perfect parent, because there is no such thing except for one. There's only one perfect parent. But if at any point in time that you were part of the division that took place between that child and their father, you owe that child an honest conversation, an apology, right? That way that child has a different understanding. I think that's essential. I think that's important for us to do. So that's where these 5 mindset shifts came from, to transform our reality. And the reality that we need to transform is the reality that we are currently experiencing in this world as it pertains to community. If you want to know how do we build our community back up, we got to first start with building up parents, and make sure that you understand parents is plural, not just one. It's not just moms, it's dads as well. Listen, it is a system that is working behind the scenes to keep us apart. And somebody put in the chat, and I agree with them wholeheartedly, that system is tearing us apart, fiber by fiber, and we're allowing it to happen. So we have to do better. We have to be open. We have to be honest. We have to communicate, not just with each other, but also with our kids, so that we cannot allow them to repeat the same mistakes that we made. So that being said, greatly appreciate everybody. Listen, I will again thank you guys for the gifts. Crystal, His Divine Appointment, Nick D, Lisa Keys. Again, greatly appreciate your support for this channel. And again, you show up. You guys continue to show up. Gentlemen, do you have any other thoughts that you want to share before we get out here?
I just wanted to say to for you guys, I don't know if y'all celebrate Father's Day or not, but either way, Father's Day coming up. So happy Father's Day to y'all. Happy Father's Day to anybody watching, anybody in the chat, all those different things like that. Go out there and celebrate. And if you have to go out there and cook your own meal, then that's ain't got nothing to do with that. I can't help you. Happy Father's Day.
Stop making dads cook their own Father's Day meal on the grill. Trying to disguise.
I saw about 3 TikToks on it today.
Hey, if they don't cook their own meals, they'll pay for their own meals at the restaurant of the woman's choice.
Look, man, look, on behalf of all these gentlemen here, again, like Garfield said, happy Father's Day to all the men out there. Shout out to Home Depot, because y'all never forget. We appreciate y'all. Listen, you guys have an awesome rest of your evening. Let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else, and we will see you guys next week.